So my phone interview was on how to have small talk. The definition of small talk on the internet is a polite conversation that's usually unimportant or uncontroversial, and they're usually during social events. But after talking to Jeff Whitman, I talked to Jeff. He's in the recreation field. Has been working at York College for over 17 years, and he's actually retiring in about a year. But after talking to Jeff, I realized that small talk is a lot more than just an unimportant conversation. When I asked him what small talk was, he said that it's a conversation to break the ice, but even more so, it's a chance you have to learn something about someone. He actually said during one of his questions, he's like, before you know anyone, like, you have the chance to learn something about someone that you would never have known. And you can't judge someone based on what they look like, because you never know what you might learn from them. So he also said that small talk is very important in your everyday life, especially during recreation conferences and job interviews. So the most important thing I learned during this phone interview is that, like I said earlier, going into the conversation when you have small talk with someone, you want to go into the conversation trying to learn something about someone. It doesn't have to be awkward. If it is awkward, it's because you're making it awkward. He told me that I have to be confident in myself and the things that I'm saying. And even if you are an introvert, it's a lot easier to have small talk if you are actively listening to them and you go into the conversation with a purpose. So here are some of the questions that I asked and the answers along with them. So the first question I asked him is what his title on campus was, and he said that he's a part-time professor. I'm going to butcher this word, emeritus, but basically it means that the York College honors him of all the hard work he's done there. So that was pretty neat to learn about. I asked him, what is small talk? And I told you this earlier. He described it as a conversation to break the ice. I then said small talk can sometimes be a way of conversing that people find petty and lacking in depth. And I was like, have you ever felt this way before? Or how do you feel about that idea? And he said that he definitely agreed with my statement, but actually in-depth conversations don't really happen that often as we would like them to. So he said deep conversations are often rare, and small talk is what we have most of the time. He said small talk has to be meaningful, or I think we are going to be bored a lot of the time for waiting for those in-depth conversations. So then I asked, how do you usually approach small talk? Is there a way, do you go into it trying to learn something about them, or do you just try to discuss certain topics? He said it depends on the situation. For example, if you're on a bus with someone where it could just be where two of you are just sort of in that situation, or if it's intentional, like you guys are in work or you're at church, then you have something to talk about then. But he said, Jeff came to the conclusion that he does unintentionally learn something in conversating. Every person that I meet knows something that I don't know, and that was probably the biggest takeaway from small talk for me, is the fact that every person that we talk to knows something that I don't know, which is pretty neat, and that's how you should go into small talk for sure. So I asked him, can you recall any memorable small talk conversations that you've had in the past that stand out to you, and why do you think that they stand out? He told me he was on a plane. It was a really long flight, and it was about 2 hours into the flight and 30 minutes left. he saw that the lady next to him was reading something about muscular dystrophy from the Muscular Dystrophy Association, and that caught his eye, and he decided to ask her about it. It turns out that she was actually the grandmother of a couple of kids that he worked at a camp for. So he was working at a camp for muscular dystrophy, and he was sitting next to the grandmother of the kids that he was counseling, and he would have never known that if he didn't start talking to her. And just pretty interesting that they were sitting on the same plane together, and he was like, if I would have talked to her 2 hours earlier, then I would have found out so much more information, even though I just found out a lot of information in the last 30 minutes of the flight. And that's when he told me it kind of made the point of don't disrate people based on how they might look or the setting, and the potential to learn is always around us. So I asked him, how do you initiate small talk? And he said the biggest thing is to be pleasant and to look pleasant, to have eye contact with the person, and to have good body language. So just like, also, like, you should not ask simple questions that are predictable, like where are you from, the weather, like those aren't good questions. You want to ask more open-ended questions. And for example, he said, did anything surprise you today? Or just asking them for advice. And then I asked him, what about how do I initiate small talk in the recreation field? And he said that since that is a different context, since the person that is at the conference, there kind of is like a purpose for why they are there, it's kind of easier to start a conversation. So you can ask them, what are you most excited for? Or like, what are you here for? And usually there is a particular reason why they're going, so it's a lot easier. And then the last question that I asked is, does small talk matter in an interview? And he said it really, really does. The first impression that you have with everyone in the building is very important. The receptionist, the people walking in the hallways next to you, it's just very important to look up at them, say hi, how are you? Just give that general, like, I want to be here, and they will definitely see that from you. So you want to be as friendly as possible. When you're getting a tour of the place, make sure you say hi to the employers in the hallway. You're not necessarily creating small talk with them, but like I said, you want to be a friendly face, and they will notice that. And if you're not doing that, the employer will definitely notice that you're not doing that too, and that's a bad sign. So that's what I have for small talk and what we talked about, and I learned a lot, so I hope you did too. Thanks.